Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Sandar Gossman. I've been in Second Life for 17 years. I have fairly severe multiple sclerosis, so by now I can't walk or dance or drive in real life. Second Life has become my main social world. I host dances and go to interesting events. Today we have the pleasure of having Tiago de Silva. Reis de Silva is lecturer in nursing education at teaching other modules. Tiago teaches undergraduate and postgraduate courses nationally and internationally. He's a senior fellow in higher education and a fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine and a fellow for faculty nursing and midwifery, Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Now it's Tiago's time to speak, so please mute your microphones and let him speak.
Thank you for that fantastic introduction. Before anything, thanking Ev at this opportunity. I'm very excited, and it is more than a session, will be to have some discussion as a group. So there will be moments that I will put some questions and we can all discuss in the chat or orally. So welcome to my session about loneliness in older adults. My name is Tiago, and I will be talking about some of the components. Can you see my presentation right now? Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect. You can see the presentation on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Gentle. Because for me, it's the three grays, but I trust it. So my aim will be to discuss, to present, to describe the concepts and loneliness and interventions in the case of older adults, and understand the effects of loneliness in our physical, mental, emotional health, and what key interventions we could do. And again, Second Life is fantastic. It's another tool that we could use. And to understand the roles in nursing, healthcare professionals, that we could bring this to when we have other conditions. Perfect. So it is interesting to understand that social isolation have few social relationships, social roles, group memberships, and infrequent social interaction. And that is objective. Loneliness is subjective because it is how the individual will interpret that. So it is a distressing experience, so it's not pleasant. And it is an unpleasant experience, and it is perceived from that isolation. And it is subjective, as I will say later on. You can have a multitude of individuals, but actually feel very lonely. You can be in your office, 45 people around you, but you don't have any connection with them. So in that case, yeah, you will be with a multitude of individuals, but feeling lonely. And the lack of this social connection, it is an important risk for physical and mental health and longevity, because we know is a risk factor, for example, for suicidal ideation. And this is why I discuss about the premature death of 26 to 29%, which is huge. We are talking here around 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 individuals. And if we go more broadly, and Holt Lundstad study a lot this component, it is the same as smoking 15 cigarettes. I don't know about you, but I was shocked to see that statistics. And it is very small, but you in the handouts you can open. In this box, you see some statistics in UK and worldwide that normally individuals over 50 years old are more likely to have loneliness, especially if they are widows, especially if they have health issues, and if they feel they do not belong to a community. For example, if they are different religion around, if they are different ethnic group, different sexual orientation than the area, they will be possibly neglected by the community, or if they already live alone. And it is interesting that we notice that 17% of older adults say they communicate with friends, family, and neighbors, and less than once a week, and 11% less frequent than once a month. That is still, we think, well, 17 and 11% is not that much. But if we put that in perspective, is 1 in 10 individuals only speak with friends once a month. That is a long period with any interaction. And I'm saying talking, not necessarily verbal, could be having a platform like Second Life and all be meeting here together and interacting. So we know that, for example, 2 million in UK, 2 million adults who are 50 or older will have loneliness in the next 10 years. And this is why these statistics are very important, because for £1, or if you want €1, or whatever coin you use in your country, on loneliness could be in £3 reduction on the medical bills. So this is a fantastic way. If we don't think about health, if we are not humanistics, we are just thinking about the money, this is a good way for us to save our healthcare settings and make sure that we are all together. The next point, and I already start talking about, but I want to bring back to the room. Why do you think it's so important to discuss about loneliness?
Because so many people are lonely?
Yes. And not long ago, we saw a world pandemic, and definitely loneliness increased exponential. It was very, very sad seeing so many individuals dying alone, not seeing family for months, years. Absolutely. I'm checking here the chat because I want to hear what you think. It's very, very useful. Sophia, it's not easy to talk about. Yes, it is. I completely agree with you. It is very taboo. Because again, how can you be lonely nowadays with so many technologies, such a massive world, so many people around? So yes, and definitely it is a reality. So it is very present in our world. We have an aging population, yes. And very important on that point, the social expectations are changing. Again, I am Portuguese, as you can see by the name, and I grew up with my grandparents. Unfortunately, all of them already passed away, but I really appreciate everything that I learned with them. So my parents, they were at work and they left me with my grandparents, which was fun because they spoil me rotten. And then my parents will come and give me the proper stick. But the grandparents have that role of the carrot, the feedback, the give everything they saw, because now they are more mature and they saw all the errors they did with their own kids, our parents, and they can try to overcompensate that and spoil rotten their grandchildren. Obviously, this is generically speaking. Unfortunately, sometimes individual will have a different experience. But it is important to see that actually in the past, a lot of times that happened, grandparents would stay with the grandchildren and will help them to bring up. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's very difficult. Both parents work full time. It's very difficult to look after them. Aging population, as you said, with multiple medical conditions. So very likely, those individuals will go to a nursing home or care home. The kids will go to a nursery as soon as possible, and it brings this age gap. And I completely agree with you, Gentle. Definitely could be eliminated. And very good point. It affects our bodies as our mind. It brings stress. And with stress, we release so many hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that will have a massive impact in our health. Hypertension, clotting the arteries, the veins, risk of stroke, dementia. I'm very passionate about dementia, and I keep teaching my students about. One of the fantastic ways of preventing dementia is talking. And again, I say talking, not necessarily verbally, could be typing. Second Life, talk with people, because I need to use my brain to communicate with someone. And if I'm trying to talk with Gentle, and I say something that doesn't make any sense, I'm expecting Gentle to challenge me and say, what do you mean about that? So that makes me think back and say, yeah, what I said doesn't make sense. So it is a fantastic tool to prevent dementia. So it's so useful. And yes, fantastic. I'm just reading very quick. Yeah, absolutely. It is very strong statistics, and they are scary when we see that. Oops. Okay. Okay, perfect. I think I am there now. Perfect. And now, I think I changed the slide. So as we discuss a little bit, it is damaging physically as 15 cigarettes. Why it goes for that point? With the release of the hormones, increased blood pressure, higher risk of stroke, and higher risk of stroke. All the arteries will be more tied up, and the veins, and it increases the stress levels. Cortisol happens, and it's very easy for us to understand that. When we are very overworking, we don't notice, and we are never sick. As soon as I start having my holidays, first day of leave, and I start having a cough, a sneeze, and the flu. Why? Because my body was so used to that high level of stress that never noticed the signs. As soon as I start stopping to relax, my immune system was already very debil, and it was enough to put me sick. And this is why people that are more low mood, with depression, sadness, they are easier to get other physical conditions because the cortisol affects their immune system, and we know that. And saying this, cancers, other conditions, infections, sepsis, all of those conditions is easy to attack our body, and unfortunately might bring serious conditions, including kill us. Disrupt sleep. I'm very worried, or I'm too bored, I don't have nothing to do, so I sleep over day and then I'm awake overnight, and I'm very worried because I will die alone and no one cares about me, and that will disturb my sleep. And again, we know the importance of sleep for health. The Alzheimer's, the dementia, as I discussed, and sometimes when we don't have nothing better to do, we go for unhealthy habits, overeating, substance misuse, to trying to bring me that comfort for seconds. So eating rubbish food, but it tastes so nice for the 5-10 minutes that I eat, that alcohol or drugs or something that I have to give me that high sensation for minutes, hours. But that is temporary. Then I'm back to the misery. And I might have other symptoms as shame or disgust or happiness, or including my low self-esteem because I use those substances. And the risk of dying prematurely because the substance misuse, because these habits, because other conditions, for example, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, obesity, and until including suicide ideation. So, So if we see in terms of nursing, and I'll be very brief here because this is what I normally talk in my classes, but it is a perfect place. And I say nurses, but could be any healthcare professional. They're ideal to bring this quality of life, this well-being, and to talk. And I'm fortunate enough to be a nurse. I'm fortunate enough to have so many patients around me, and especially in older people. And I'm fortunate enough, as I said to the patient, I'm getting a little bit emotional, to have the last minutes of so many patients. They could trust me to just give the last breath and pass. And that is so special place because means they trust me to do that passage. And this is why nursing and other healthcare professionals are so important to be with them in the last minutes. And with COVID, I had so many names. I adopted so many people's relatives because they couldn't say bye to their mother, a son, cousin. And I was there, and they call me so many names, the relative's name, and they say bye to me multiple times, and I'm getting emotional here, imagining. But I love that to think that I could be a second individual for them to say bye to their relatives. And I think that is very, very important. And again, in that time, they didn't want me to give medication. They don't want me to give any food. They want me just to be there and not dying alone. And this is why it's such a topic that touched me so many times. Good. So we are good with time. So in a nutshell, and this is Weiss, who was a psychologist, loneliness is caused not by being alone, but by being without definitive needed relationship or set of relationships. We are social animals. And it is interesting because I want to know your feelings. But with the pandemic, it affected all of us in a way that we were so drained in terms of no hug, no kiss, no talk, too close, stop talking with people, isolation, so many commands that we were horrified because we felt that any social interaction we could kill. And I understand in terms of the transmission of the virus. But again, so much of that affect our self-esteem, affect our relationship, and again, affect our immune system. So it was a little bit a complicated situation. We are social. We need people. We need to talk people. We need to feel people. And again, it's no needed to be physical necessarily. Could be potentially as a platform like Second Life. and just talk, see the friends every day, talk with them, living that life as social individuals. So if we see the early definitions of loneliness, it was initially this lack of intimacy, and then evolved to this subjective feeling of isolation, not belonging. And if we see the Pinkwart and Sorensen was saying about this distressing feeling and discrepancies of one desire. So I would, and this is very subjective because some of us, 5 friends are good, 3 friends are good, 1 friend is good enough. Other people, they need 10 millions of people to feel. And if you have only 9 million, you are very lonely. So it is important to see this desire and this individual aspect of, for everyone, is very specific. When we see the 4 theoretical approach, and I will be very brief about this. Very important topic here on the chat. Absolutely, about working remotely. And it is very interesting because working remotely, we missed seeing people, and now things are back to normalish. For example, today I'm in my office. For 145 people, I'm the only one here. So people now have another way of working. But I try to come every day so I can see people, I can chat, I can have a laugh, I can say nonsense and connect. I need that. It's very important for me, including seeing people on the underground, and I like that. Some individuals not, and I understand and I respect. But definitely during the COVID gave us a different way of connect and relate. Perfect. So in the 4 theoretical approach, which I will go very briefly because you have the slide and I don't want to give too much theory. We have Weiss, 1973, with the interactionist approach that I will explain in a second. The Sullivan and from Reichman with the psychodynamic approach, Tillich and Mustakas with the existential approach, and Peplau and Perlman cognitive approach. And interestingly, if we go now in a little bit more detail, we have the interactionist approach from Weiss. That was the idea of this loneliness was a combination of absence of a social networking, what we were talking about, remote working and not being able to have this social networking, and a lack of an intimate figure, a partner, a family member, so someone in your inside area. And Weiss discussed 2 types of loneliness. 1 emotional, 1 social. So emotional loneliness will be, I have this partner, but I cannot connect with him. He's there, I give the food, but that's it. It's like I'm a parent. There is no connection at all. Romantic or emotional, it's just not there. And the social loneliness is about contact. Yes, I have a very good interaction at home, but I don't know anyone here around. And it's easy to understand, for example, with, for example, now the refugees, they leave their country, they go to another place. Not necessarily they understand the language, not necessarily they understand the culture. They were not planning to move there. The others might see as enemy, and they are lacking these social connections. So they have this social loneliness. About the emotional loneliness, just before I progress, another of my passions is about emotional intelligence. And we know, and this is statistic, it might vary, but for example, in terms of gender, female have a higher emotional intelligence than male. which means in terms of emotional loneliness, so many times female will feel higher emotional loneliness because they give more. I'm speaking generally, okay? It might vary depending on the individual, but generally speaking, female have a higher emotional intelligence. They give more. They expect the partner to listen more, to be more active, to be more attentive, and to give the same level of emotional connection. On the other side, male, because the brain is different, I'm not trying to justify, but because the brain is different, sometimes it's the lack of understanding that they really need that level of talking, understanding, and giving time to. Good. Yes, perfect. So in terms of pros and cons, always we see that. In terms of emotional loneliness, could be someone that, for example, lost a loved one, a widow. And statistically, we know that sometimes someone that is very attached to one to the other, when the partner dies, normally the other one dies very quickly, in 6 months, 1 year. Interestingly, and again, I'm going binary gender because it is the statistics that we have until now. I hope by the future we can have more other genders. But it is interestingly, females survive longer without a partner than actually the male. That might mean a lot. So it could be including that because the female could give that emotional connection. They can see it. Could be because maybe 40, 50 years ago it was a shame to be homosexual. So it is interesting to see how this happened. So definitely I'm in a risk factor to die faster. And definitely without my wife, I will die faster. Divorce, again, if divorce happens, or no friends at all. And for social loneliness, as I said, refugees, relocating, unemployment, being excluded for the community organizations, for example, being in another country that do not have their type of religion, not having any social group. So this group, you are preventing social loneliness. So very, very important. And obviously, this could bring so many side effects and complications. In terms of the criticisms of this theory, is it seems that only negative things take towards it. There is not that much positive things that could bring to loneliness. And another thing is research in loneliness has benefit from that black and white perspective. Oh, I have a very good comment. Let me see. This might also do with tend to have more friends. Absolutely. And Roxy is very interesting. I love anatomy and physiology. And female brain, what I'm saying, it might be a little bit polemic. The brain is slightly lighter than the male brain, 100 grams, so it's not that much. But structurally, it's very, very different. Naturally, female have much more connections between the cerebral areas than a male brain, because the hormones will do that change, which means that the man is less multitask than female, because with the hormones, you have more capacity verbally, you have much more knowledge of words, you can do much more connection, and you have more capacity to talk more than a male due to this brain connection. So absolutely. From what I see, my mother is always at groups. Yes, absolutely. So including personality could change. Oh, pets, absolutely. That is a very good way, and I will discuss that later. It is fantastic, and a lot of research was done, actually. Cats and dogs and these furry animals that you have, the fact that you are stroking them, it actually is very beneficial because you are discharging that stress, anxiety, and you are reacting to the animal. You will be talking to the animal. You will be interacting with the animal. So it does help. And this is for you to laugh. My mom, obviously, now me and my brother, we left home. So she's at home with my dad. And she's still going to the farm and talking with her chickens, and she needs that animals, and she substitutes us by the chickens and the rabbits and everything. It does benefit. It's not the same as another individual, as the example that I gave. If I say something, I'm expecting Gentle to challenge my phrase and say, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. So it is a good way of having someone that can bounce back. But if I don't have a pet, is a good alternative. It's not the same, but could benefit some of that loneliness. Absolutely. Okay, perfect. My mom will kill me for talking about her chicken. Absolutely. But it is that you have your cat, you talk with the cat, you interact with the cat. It is very, very useful because it makes you think, it makes you reflect, it makes you mobile, it makes you be back to life. So very, very good point. Good. So now psychodynamic, very briefly, it associates as a pathological clinical perspective. So it is because you had a trauma, because you didn't attach when you were children, you would be living with loneliness. You don't have connections with people. So says the lack of social skills, the lack of going to school, that will trigger loneliness in an older age. So it is a very negative and clinical perspective. Existential says that loneliness is an existential condition of people's existence. So everybody will get old. Everybody will get lonely. So it is a very strong statement. And then talks about the anxiety loneliness and the true loneliness. So for example, the anxiety loneliness is this idea that, oh my God, I'm losing this friend, I'm getting anxious. And the true loneliness is the true loneliness. So no, you are not lonely. You have 45 people in the office. You have people. You are not lonely. You feel it, but you are not. Which again is a criticism because it is this feeling alone and this notion, objective notion to be alone. The cognitive, which is one of the most accepted, is this, depends on the personality, everybody's different, and is how you perceive loneliness. So if I say I don't feel lonely because I have 5 fantastic friends, and when I have those 3 hours in the day that I am alone at home, I need it. So actually, I'm not lonely. And it says that it's the evaluation of one individual against some stereotypical ideas. So I might living alone, but I'm not lonely. Yes, I'm not married. Yes, I don't go to church or to any of my religion. But when I'm at work 12 hours a day, I have plenty of people and I talk with everyone. So it brings back to how you live and how you feel with loneliness. In terms of prevalence and experience, we already talked, so I'm very briefly here. 18 to 20, nearly 21% of the people in UK is experienced loneliness. That is a high number. And what shocked me was, including in nursing homes, 22% of the adults, they feel lonely. Nursing homes, they have nurses all the time. They have a lot of other older adults. They have doctors. They have the chaplain. and they still feeling lonely. So again, it goes for that perspective that you can be thirsty in ocean. You have so much water, you have so many people, but you actually don't connect. And some of the risk factors, which is important for us to cover, gender, so male and female, and you very well spot in the chat, female normally have more interactions and are more in survival mode. Okay, now that I don't have the husband, I'm start going out, I have more time for me, I start talking with people, I speak with the neighbor. They normally do more relationships and they keep more relationships. Man is, oh, well, it's fine. So normally in terms of gender, male normally is more lonely than female. Low social economic status is not news. Again, if I'm rich and I have a house in Los Angeles, I will have 10,000 people coming to my house and in parties every night. I'm rich. It's a good friend to be. Now, if I don't have that condition, why people would come to see me? They might be terrified that I will ask for money. They might feel very awkward if I'm smelly, if I don't have clothes appropriate, if I don't have food. I might be too slim or too fat. So it is not the individual, but how the other individual feel in presence with someone. So it can cut some strings. Poor physical health, oh well, I'm not meeting Tiago. He's all the time moaning about his health. He's moaning about his pains. He's moaning about the 45 tablets he have every day. So poor physical health. One, I might not be that physical able to leave home. And B, if I have people, that is my day. It's my aches and pains and conditions, or I can't go out because my allergy, I can't do this because I'm allergic, I can't eat this because my bowel. So people they feel uncomfortable and normally don't interact or connect with these individuals. If they have little contact with family and friends. Geography, we know, for example, individuals in countrysides, sometimes it's more difficult to interact with others because there are kilometers of places without anyone. For example, back home in my little town, I have more cows and sheep than adults. So if something happens, it's easier for me to see a cow than actually to see another adult. So it can be. Now, I'm living right now in London. You don't have space to be without people. Doesn't mean the people will talk with you, but it is easier to see people. Marital status, we know that the fact that we have already a relationship, it's easier to feel less lonely. Interesting in Kings, and then I cut the bracket, but they did a research here about diabetes, and they noticed men that were married were living more 6 years than the men not married, because according with the interviews and the wives, and it was a more strong heterosexual study. Interestingly, the wives were very much looking after them, so it was very interesting, that dynamic. And ethnicity and language, again, if I do not speak the language of the country, and if I have, for example, dementia, I will start forgetting everything I learn, and I will stay with my natural language, my mother language, so people might not understand. And obviously, sexual orientation. So, for example, if it's not, we know homosexual, trans, will have a higher risk of feeling lonely. But also, for example, learning disabilities or other I don't like the term disabilities, I prefer more abilities, or neurodiverse, because individuals feel awkward and they say, you know what, if I don't see, I don't talk. So it is, unfortunately, a reality for people to distension the others. Effects, very, very briefly, because we already discussed in terms of mental health, the depression, cognitive function. It was very interesting. I was in China for 3 weeks teaching older adult nursing there, and I was talking English and I had a translator, but there was no back information. And after 3 weeks, when I came back to UK, I felt I lost a lot of word capacity because I was used to trying to speak in short words very slowly, doing some sounds, and I got lazy. I don't need to actually try to communicate properly because they don't understand anyway. So it is, the human being is lazy per nature. If I can say to my brain, just be lazy, you don't need to communicate, I start losing abilities, I start losing words, I start losing capacity. Now, out of curiosity, I was reading an article about this. People that speak one more language, for each new language that you learn, can give you more 10 years without cognitive impairments, dementia. Because the reason is your brain needs to be very creative to learning a different language and say, okay, right, when you are talking about gato, is the same as cat, and is the same as, so it makes all these connections to understand that concept. So our brain is very, very clever. Social substance misuse, for example, alcoholism, bereavement, stress, lower immune system due to stress, suicidal ideation and self-harm, and a lack of sleep. When we go for our physical health, an increase of mortality, higher blood pressure, heart problems, physical functioning and disability, and unhealthy behaviors, and overall will impact. So now, very brief, because I want to give some time to discuss, I will show you some different scales that you could use, including in your home, with your loved ones, with yourself, to see your stage of loneliness. So there are different scales. They are, I put here four. The four of them are good. They have pros and cons to assess loneliness. So one is the Campaign to End Loneliness Measurement Tool, which I quite enjoy because it's very short, 3 questions. It has a very positive wording, which I like, and does not mention loneliness, which is good because sometimes mentioning loneliness, people are triggered to go in that direction. And if you want a short and sensitive worded tool, it's very easy. So anyone, including a lay individual, could use. So I quite enjoy it. The De Jong Gerveld Loneliness Scale I quite like, is from our Asian colleagues, and it is 6 questions. It is positive and negative wording. It is better for researchers because it's slightly more complex, and it is a rigorous tool. So it is good for research mainly. The UCLA, it's 3 words, unfortunately have some negative wording. And what I like to use it is because it's rigorous, it's short, and it's very quick to score. And in my article, I use it for community nurses because they don't have a lot of time. So I quite enjoyed it. But you have the single item question. It is negative, and it is 1 question. So very quick, and it is to get more quick the outcome of that problem. UCLA, as I discussed, so have some strength, so it's very used. It can be used in different ways. It's very comparable because so many places use it. But the issue is, for example, negative wording. Sometimes you might have some positive, false positives or false negatives, and sometimes can be quite tricky. You have the score here, so it is from my article, UCLA, and is easily first. How often do you feel that you lack companionship? Hardly ever, some of the time, or often. How often do you feel left out? Hardly ever, some of the time, often. How often do you feel isolated from others? Hardly ever, some of the time, or often. So as you can see, it's very quick to score, and I quite like it because it goes direct to the point, but it is negative. And the campaign to end loneliness measurement tool, these three, as I said, it is, for example, I am content with my friendships and relationships. I have enough people I feel comfortable asking for help at any time. My relationships are as satisfying as I would want them to be. And you score these from 0 to 12 because you have all these different answers. Strongly disagree, you give 4, and strongly agree, you give 0. So it is an easy way. Can you see the importance of this one is positive? I am content with my friendships and relationships. Yeah, I am. So that gives me a 0. No, I'm not. I strongly disagree with that. It gives me a 4. And the De Jong-Gerveld 6-item scale, it is 6 questions, as I said, and it is the wording, as you will see, it's more academically. So, for example, it is 6 questions. I experience a general sense of emptiness. I miss having people around me. I often feel rejected. There are plenty of people I can rely on when I have problems. There are many people I can trust completely. And there are enough people I feel close to. So you can see here positive and negative. And you score from 0 as no, 1 as yes. If you are in doubt and you say more or less, you still score 1. Why? Because you are aiming to catch all. And if you are saying, I'm not sure, you might be. So it is a very useful tool for that. And I would encourage you later tonight, just play with the 4 scales and see about yourselves. Are you positive in any of those? Are you negative in the 4 of them? So how are you with the scale? The single item, I quite like it because it is, are you very lonely, lonely at times, or never lonely? Other example is, how often do you feel lonely? Hardly ever, some of the time, often. Or including very specific, in the past week, have you ever felt lonely? Rarely, less than 1 day, some of the time, 1 or 2 days, occasionally 3 or 4 days, or all the time I felt lonely, more than 5 days. So it is very direct. So it is good because it goes straight to the point and you know, okay, no, definitely you are feeling lonely. In terms of prevention, because it is what I want to talk, yes, you do have these 4 scales in the handouts, absolutely. So in terms of prevention and interventions, promote independence, encourage people to have their own lives, go out, socialize, talk with people, including if you don't want to and you prefer to stay at home and watch TV. TV is sucking your soul out. It is important to talk with each other, to go out, or to be inside, but in the computer, because at least you can interact with someone. Prevent or delay the deterioration of well-being and delay the need for more costly and intensive service because we do not have them. type of interventions, we can do one-to-one interventions. For example, the befriending, again, is a very social, is a very old way, but talking, be a friend of someone else. Someone that you know is your neighbor and is very lonely. So can be mentoring. You have, for example, someone else and you want to have that relationship and help to the shop for them, etc. This gatekeeping that could be, for example, looking after them, including safeguarding them and making sure they are safe. In that case, could be group interventions, and I will discuss some examples. Wider community engagement, or, hey, Second Life, online or technology-based interventions. As I said, befriending, we could have telephone and group befriending. It's already 6 years that I do this. I like to volunteer for some associations, and I like, for example, the Age UK. And during Christmas time, especially, I can't volunteer on other times, but on Christmas, college is closed, so I can volunteer. And I like to do this telephone, and it breaks my heart because we ring older adults. And again, you can be a younger adult in loneliness, but Age UK is more for older adults. But we ring them on Christmas, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and talk with them. And it breaks my heart because that hour, they don't have nothing to do. They are just talking with me over the phone. And I was talking rubbish about what do you have prepared? What will be your dinner? What are you seeing someone? What are you watching on TV? Some of these things. But for 1 hour, we are talking about life. And I believe that at least made them feel slightly better, because otherwise they will be completely lonely for the whole. And again, it is only Christmas here in the UK. Should be all the time, but I can't. But they have other volunteers, so could be this befriending. Could be, for example, group befriending also. And this small talk, it is very important. Different types of assistance could be companionship, transport, picking up medication and bring that back. Could be shopping once a week or twice a week. But it requires volunteers mainly, or paid workers. So sometimes these individuals will pay with their pension for these individuals to do these little things. It is interesting. I was involved in a project of teenagers and younger adults interacting with older adults. And when I evaluate with my team the impact, it was beautiful. The younger adults, they felt very valuable because they learn lessons. They learn weird, between brackets, English words. They organized better their time. They were very responsible, and including some of them wanted to come to a healthcare setting because they felt they could help so many more people. And the older adults evaluated so high because they felt very useful, because that time they could inspire a younger adult about life. So it can be very useful for society, for both ends of the aging group. And mentoring, very briefly, it is important to give these help and teaching and experience. However, this can be a very big umbrella term. The community navigators or wayfinders could be as an interface between the community and public service. They are different types based on the needs of the population, and they will give practical and social support. So, for example, the Meals on Wheels here in the UK, it is groups of social support. They will bring food for the older adults. They cannot go out to buy their own food. Group service that you are more used to and you understand better, so different needs, very high structure, and it depends on the needs of the population. Wider community, for example, social group, religion, the singer, all the pastimes that you had in life, these communities could come together and support you. And because we are online, it is important to talk about the information and communication technology, social networking, robotics interventions that I will show you a picture in a second. Video games and virtual reality is nowadays very common. Hey, Second Life. And 3D virtual environment intervention, again, Second Life. So, and it is interesting because I will show you a picture of a video. And then you can see on YouTube that video. In Japan, this lady was for, I think, 4 or 5 years without speaking a word. And they put this robotic baby seal in her lap, and she starts stroking it, and she laughed, but she laughed with that genuine, childish laugh, so genuine and natural. And she started talking in Japanese, but the translation was, "Hello, little one, how are you?" And the family was gobsmacked because she was muted for years. And seeing that interactive robot provoke her to actually to talk. So yes, so I have now some more for you to discuss about what do you think you could do. And in very briefly, I'm showing the conclusion because I want some chat. What we could do, definitely check the loneliness, assess loneliness for your loved ones, for yourself, for your partners, for everyone, and address loneliness. See what's the problem, see what you can do. As you were writing in the chat, be brave, go to the world, start talking with people, start interacting with people, and see what groups and social support do you have around you that you could have that connection, and promote the self-esteem and identity of these individuals, and educate everyone about loneliness. So spread the love, spread the word. And this is very briefly the summary. Definitely loneliness is a public health issue. It is needed to be addressed. We discussed the 4 key theoretical approach. We discussed the physical, mental, social problems that can bring to our health. And there are multiple loneliness interventions and assessments. And it is our role socially to actually to support everyone. You also have a spare file with my contact, and I'm very happy to take questions and to be contacted. And I hope it was useful, and thank you so much for paying attention and being so engaged. Thank you.
Tiago, this is Gentle. Thank you so very much for sharing both your experiences, your personal experiences, and your research with us. And I think you can see how interactive our community can be. So my question is, would you consider coming back into Second Life to collect data, which you could do by survey or interview or focus groups? Maybe you could teach us more, or maybe you could even conduct some loneliness antidotes here?
I would love that. Thank you so much. It's a fantastic community, and I never felt so welcome.
Okay, Shay has a question. She's saying, this is some chat that scrolled by. Faith would like to know, what about love for the older person? Is there any data on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are some literature about that. And normally it depends on their background. So for example, the religion aspect. So for example, are they okay to, during their grief, to start with a second relationship? or do they feel that they need to be single all their life, or they feel guilty if they have another partner. So it is very recommendable, but people might not feel able to, because they feel, oh, now I'm too old, I can't have anyone else. So it depends. So there are some literature on love, and I would love to come one day here and talk about love in other adults and including sexuality, because sometimes it's a big taboo topic.
And there's a question from Widget. She says, related to social isolation, are you looking at the impact of the ongoing COVID pandemic on risk associated with face-to-face contact, as well as the subsequent breakdown of the National Health Service in the UK? That breakdown, as with public health in the US, feels to her like a large-scale abandonment.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, USA is ahead of UK, and they did a whole study. I'm very happy to share with you, Gentle, and you can disseminate. It is a long study about the population and the impact of loneliness, and it is the first country doing it. And it is long. I'm talking 75 pages, I believe, exactly studying that in the whole state, what is the impact of loneliness. So it is coming now.
Got a lot of questions here. Polaris is making a comment that you're welcome to comment on. He says he watched Sword Art Online 2 anime, where a hospital-ridden character used VR to socialize. She's an invert. Polaris is an invert, but he's going to be 20 years in Second Life next week.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. You can use, and it is a stigma, and including a stereotype that if older people on the VR doesn't work. It can be true, but it cannot be true. And I was just last week, we were doing a little experiment with VR headsets, which it is normally very distressing, but for older adults with dementia, and see how they would interact to have, for example, a CT scan. And they accepted very well. They were so interested in seeing the movie there. They allowed us to do the CT scan, which is very nerve-wracking, because obviously that is very loud. You see all the magnets going around. And because they were so immersed in this virtual reality, they tolerate completely. So VR, virtual reality, Second Life, these platforms, these game platforms, it can be a fantastic way for you to live your life again. Because you can be whatever. You can be 97 years old, but here in Second Life, you can be 20 and feel again all the life that you miss. I don't know if that answer.
Luke has a long question to ask. She noticed that all the loneliness scales presume very strongly that people know what loneliness feels like, that they know how to define it or recognize it, and the associated feelings and effects. A typical question is, do you feel lonely? Are they suggesting recognition of loneliness is innate or not constructed? Have you ever encountered people who do not understand what loneliness means, so that they cannot describe what they are supposed to feel? And if you have, how would you help them?
Fantastic question.
The audience to relate to that.
Absolutely, fantastic question. And you are absolutely correct. I did struggle with some of the scales. So in those cases that I go to some individual that they might not know what is the concept of loneliness, or they feel that concept in a different way, I prefer to use the Campaign to End Loneliness measurement tool, because it's easier and is more objective. And the point is, I am content with my friends and my relationships? And you say yes or no. You can analyze that. Or I have enough people around to help me at any time. Again, very objective question, yes or no. Or my relationships are satisfying and I would want them to be as they are, yes or no. So in that case, it's easier for you to assess. But I completely agree with you. Some of the scales, they are so close and so research-based that some of the older adults, cognitive impaired or neurodiverse, they might struggle to understand that concept. Very good question.
And I'm afraid we're going to need to end Q&A. We need to finish setting up for the next pair of presenters. Thank you again so much. That was really a very good presentation. And obviously our audience was very interested in interacting with you. Tiago's contact information is on the handout in the box. If you would like to email him, that's okay, Tiago?
Yes, I'm very happy. And gentle, I will take that offer back and I will come later to one of these times to actually to talk with you and do some research altogether to see it. I think it's fantastic.
Okay.